afternoon, Odd-Arne.
Good afternoon.
How are we, my friend?
I'm fine. I'm excited that you invited me. Thank you.
It's a pleasure. Today we have Odd-Arne all the way from Norway, and we were just having a conversation prior to this around some of the daylight hours and nighttime hours in, what were you saying? It's north. The further north in Norway you go, the more chance you've got of just having complete night or complete day, isn't it?
Yeah, 2 times a year it turns into either a full daylight. You can have 2 months of sun if there are no clouds, and around Christmas it can turn almost complete dark. So you have to get used to it.
Yeah, definitely. We almost ended up in a complete conversation and then realized we should probably record it and perhaps pick it up further in the conversation. So a brief intro, I guess, for those who are new to the podcast. Leadership Unplugged is meant to be a raw, unfiltered conversation with people like yourself, Odd-Arne, and generally C-suite or founders or leaders within their respective fields to, I guess, bring value to other leaders, but also potentially people who are thinking of stepping into those positions and some of the challenges they might face and some of the solutions and mindset you need and what that world looks like a little bit. So hopefully we get to dive into some of that today. Odd-Arne, you are CTO at Gen2Energy, which is all around clean energy with hydrogen. Very exciting, a field that I'm not particularly as knowledgeable in as other areas of tech that I've discussed with other podcast guests. So I'm intrigued to dive in today and get some of the context to that and how what you might be doing could quite literally save the planet, which is exciting. But let's start as we always do. Could you tell us a bit about yourself, Odd-Arne? Tell us a bit about your background, sort of how you ended up where you are and what that looks like now.
Yeah, I'm happy to do that. Let's start with myself. I'm 54 years old. I had 2 grown children. One is studying medicine, the other one is studying engineering. Married, a cat. Live in Porsgrunn in southern Norway, where the largest industrial site is. I've been working there for 21 years. But then I decided to join CTO as a CTO in Gen2Energy. I've been studying for a long time before that. So I have a PhD in electrochemistry. And electrochemistry turned out to be a very hot topic nowadays with the green shift in particular, which is actually all about electrification and using electricity to produce green alternatives to fossil fuel. So that's me. I've been working for large Norwegian industrial companies like Hydro and lately Yara, with hydrogen and ammonia production, and all of a sudden this has turned into also being part of the solution for the green shift, where both hydrogen and ammonia can play a vital role. And that's exactly why I actually took the chance to leave a safe and good job in Yara to establish myself in Gen2Energy, where we actually try to establish a complete value chain for green hydrogen production and transport and sales, especially within Europe. The market in Norway is still not sufficiently large to pick up all the volumes we are planning to produce. So that's why countries like Germany is of particular interest for us.
That sounds amazing. Can I rewind slightly there before we dive into Gen 2? Did you have a love for this space then when you were younger, or is it just more that you were academically bright and smart and you kind of accidentally ended up in this space, or what did that look like?
Good question, actually. My interest in science actually started with the fact that I love doing mathematics, and I've always been curious. And the older I get, the more questions I had to science and what that could be used for. So when I started my PhD, I looked at an alternative green way of making aluminium. And that was my first introduction to the Kyoto Protocol and the climate change. And that really struck me so interested that turned out writing an appendix in my thesis about the green shift. And that's more than 20 years ago I did that. So I've been following this very closely. So after working with aluminium some years in the green era, I decided to do the same with Yara, where fertilizer is a role. And they also have some challenges regarding use of fertilizer, but still being very important. 50% of the annual production of food is actually caused by using fertilizer. So there has been a red thread through my life where climate change and also we now see the impact of it has become very important to me to at least be a part of and try to find a good solution for turning it around and getting back to where we actually were before.
So are we specifically talking about climate change here then when we're thinking of green energy, or are there other things that tangent off of that and other challenges that people might not be aware of?
Well, I think what we do now with the globe is all linked to how we use our energy. And you have to keep in mind that we are consuming so much fossil fuel that if you compare it, it took 1 million years to make the fuel we burn in 1 year. So we are really shifting very rapidly, and the world is not able to adapt fast enough for these changes. So energy and climate, they are very much linked together. And if you solve the energy part, you will, I think, also solve the climate part.
So what happens if we continue on the current trajectory and don't do anything?
Well, I think that just looking out and looking back 20 years, I see changes that you cannot ignore. It's getting warmer and wilder, more drought and more rain and more heavy storms and so on. So I think no one can say that there isn't a change. Weather is day-to-day changes, but what we see now is more general trends that is inevitably happening and changed. I live in a country where you have normally a lot of snow during winter. When I was a kid, I used to be outside doing a lot of activities where snow was an important part of it. Nowadays, my kids, they grew up with not that much snow, and it's even less now when they are in their 20s. So definitely a change has happened. And if you think geologically, even 50 years is just a fraction of a second from a geological point of view. So things are happening very fast. So we really need to look around. And it's not just the climate, it's also the environment. See, with all the pollutions and especially plastic has come up as a real threat to the world and the bird lives, for example, and all the species living in the sea. So we need to change the lives we have. And honestly speaking, I'm not sure people understand the fact that we probably have to change the way of living as well. We need to think more circular and sustainable. And then you're back to what we are doing. We are trying to at least come up with alternative energy that we can at least continue living more or less as we do today, but using less and using it more wisely, I would say.
I mean, it's such a fascinating and interesting topic. Can you tell us then how Gen2Energy is aiming to achieve some of those goals? Like, how is it doing things differently to what anybody else has done up to this point?
Well, I think I should start by saying that we are very fortunate in Norway. We have the oil and the gas, as everyone knows, and that has turned us into a very fortunate and quite rich country. But we also have a lot of rain and thereby also a lot of water. So we have a very advanced hydroelectric grid in Norway, which is stable, and there has always been a saying that the Norwegians, they have very cheap electricity. That's not the case anymore, but we are still competitive compared to many others.
Right.
So when Gen2Energy started in 2019, they realized there are still energy pockets in Norway where it's not so easy to transport out all the electricity being produced, which is green, and it's 24/7 with a high capacity and very, very good way of using electricity is to turn it into something. So if you look at the Norwegian industry, there's a lot of aluminium, for example, being produced, and ferro industry is also big. So we have a long tradition in Norway for doing this. What has come up now is that hydrogen probably will play a very important role. You see, EU is having very ambitious targets of obtaining 20 million tons of hydrogen already by 2030, and they need to import about half of it in order to get to that goal.
Wow.
And that's what Gen2Energy wants to do. We want to utilize this energy, which is still competitive, as I mentioned, turn it into hydrogen, and then transport it to customers where they actually need it. Because compared to Norway, if you look at Europe, they don't have this kind of energy grid and so much electricity as we have. They have a gas grid. They are fossil-based, the energy system they have there. So it will take time before they can pick up the speed and do it themselves, so to speak. So that's why they need to import. And that's why Gen2Energy can play an important role in being one of the early movers, supplying Europe with green hydrogen.
So my understanding, when we've talked about this before, that's the entire value chain, right? Which is quite rare to produce and transport, isn't it?
Exactly, and it's an important point that you make here, because if you look traditionally, there's been produced a lot of hydrogen over the years. Almost 70 million tons a year of hydrogen is being produced as we speak, but almost 96% of this is turned into hydrogen from fossil fuel. And since hydrogen is a very light gas, it has been a challenge to transport it. And that's why most of the plants being built around the world has been based on LNG, which is liquid methane as a fossil fuel. But there's been the neighboring area, they have been using it. So transport of hydrogen has never been really an issue before. Small quantities, of course, but not at the industrial scale we're talking about now. And that's really also the case for ammonia. Only 10% of the world's ammonia production has been traded. Most of this has been produced outside where they need it. So the whole transport part of the value chain needs to develop very fast to accommodate the increased volumes we're talking about here.
So how do you even start to begin to tackle that problem when nobody's come up with a solution for it yet? Like, how did you sit in a room with a bunch of people and think, right, this is what we need to do, or like how did you even begin that?
Well, you need to look at the different steps in the value chain one by one, so to speak. Of course, you have to start with where can you actually produce hydrogen and where can you produce it cheap? Because you have, in a way, a penalty for the transport. You need to make sure that in order to be competitive where the customer is, you need to make sure also that the production is cheaper than you would do, for example, in Germany, right, with the local consumer. So that's where we started, finding the right spot where you have the power, you have the water you need to produce the hydrogen, you have the site, and you go in negotiations with the local community. And we are aiming for Mosjøen, which is the north of Norway. And we have had a very good collaboration with the local municipality all the time. So that's step number one. And then we need to find a way to store the hydrogen we produce. So we have been working, exploring different opportunities, and ended up that producing hydrogen and store it compressed in containers is a doable solution, which you can get quite early. There are a lot of people now talking about having a pipeline going all the way from Norway to Germany or any other countries in the area, but that will take time, and we want to be early movers. And we believe that going by container is the fastest and easiest way to do, because the technology is there already. And so we can, in a way, start doing it as soon as we have the hydrogen being produced. We need to produce a lot of these containers, but we have actually a Norwegian supplier that is willing to do that. So, but you also need a framework in place. So you need the approval for transporting these amounts. So safety is an important key milestone that we have in all elements we're doing. So we've done some research on our own, but we've also been working very closely with companies that has this kind of competence and also universities to really understand how we can do this as safe as possible, because we cannot allow for any problem. So I will say that we learned quite a lot from the LNG history, because they went through the same 20 years ago, finding out how you can transport liquid natural gas across the globe. And that's what you do today. And you rarely, I would say luckily, have any incidents there. So also the transport part has been something we have evaluated. We're talking to ship industries, we're talking to railway companies, and also for the last mile looked at how can we do this with trucks and so on. So understanding the logistic and what are the important parts to play, where can you actually transport? Because there are areas where you're not allowed to transport large volumes, like populated areas and things like that. So finding the right tracks, finding the right boundaries for how we can do that has been important. And last but not least, finding the customers who are willing to take the hydrogen on board in the form we come with and empty the containers fast enough to send them back, because there's a lot of cost involved in producing these containers, so we don't have unlimited amount of that. So the whole logistic part has been an important part of it. And to do that, we have developed our own system where we actually have an IoT solution where we can track where the containers are, how full they are, so we can plan the logistic carefully and also efficiently to make sure that, again, the cost of transport becomes as low as possible.
Does that also fit into some sort of enterprise resource planning tool then, in terms of actually moving stuff around and keeping track of where it is? Like, that can't be done manually, surely. That's got to be some sort of big tech platform sitting in the background.
Well, you can do it manually, but then it's not that efficient. So it's all about cost, actually, because today with artificial intelligence and cloud solutions, why shouldn't you utilize it? And when we started this, we thought that there are millions of containers being transported all over the world. There must be a solution for it that we can just copy and start using. But it turned out that when you try to combine everything, planning the production, the transport, and the sales, there were no one actually with a full complete solution covering everything. So we had taken bits and pieces, and now we try to merge them in an innovative way into one final solution. And I must say that's innovation in itself, and hopefully that's also something we can capitalize on, because there will come people after us that will be interested in these kind of solutions. So we are definitely thinking of how we can capitalize on this.
Absolutely. Sounds like a lot of moving parts. So if we tie this into some of the leadership questions that might pop out from this and some of the challenges you faced, etc. You mentioned earlier about coming from a relatively safe job in a safe environment and just sort of plugging away and continuing as most people would, to then jump into this, which, even as you're describing it, is giving me anxiety, because there's just so many things, so much to think about, and you're still a small team, right? So how does that compare to sort of like your history in maybe more established corporations, and now in this world where you're having to wear many hats and do lots of different things and spin many plates simultaneously? What's that like?
Well, I must say that I was not prepared for what turned out to be the new reality when I moved into this job. But I always been intrigued by the thought that I could make a difference, even though it's small. I would like to make a contribution, and I think that in a smaller company we have, in a way, handpicked the best we can find within different areas with experience, so that we lose a lot of this, we call it dead weight that you have in a big company, which is linked often to administration. You have a lot of levels, getting things done and getting the necessary approval takes time, which is natural. But with a small team, you can do this much faster, and you can also have a bigger share in the decision making. So me as a CTO, I have a lot of responsibility regarding finding not only the right technology, but also the serious players in the field that can actually deliver a solution that works. And that triggered me that all of a sudden I could have a chance to start really using the competence I had. And I see now I play on the whole field of experience from Hydro and from Yara, and now with the new company I learned more the 2 last year than I've done over the last 10 years, so to speak, because there's so much new. And that's I'm intrigued by that too. And the fact that there isn't any handbook you can open and just figure out here it is, and that's how we do it. We have to write that book ourselves. And that's also something that as a manager, I feel very rewarding. I feel the responsibility, and I have nights where I'm wondering how we will manage. But on the other side, it gives so much back to be part of this and actually shaping the future. So my goal is that at the end, we will actually build this value chain and it will work and people will copy it afterwards. And the next generation will thank us for what we have contributed to as a team.
You come at it from a very strong, positive energy place, which is really nice and good to hear, and is clear as well, like that resonates out from you. So if I could ask a question around that, do you think that everything you just described was in a positive light? So the fact that you can influence things, that you can have more of an influence on things, that you can really make an impact, etc. Other people may look at that as extreme stress and pressure and too much responsibility. So would you say you would be looking, if you were to look to get into those types of roles, or even if you were looking to hire people now and you were thinking about it, would you look for somebody with that particular mindset that comes at it from a positive angle, or do you think that can be a learned skill?
Interesting question, really. I think that being honest about the work that we are doing and the risks involved is something that you need to take in very early, because there are a lot of risks, and it's not all the days are not sunny, to put it like that. We have obstacles, we have worries and we see that things are taking longer, and a smaller company needs to knock more than once on the door to get the attention you want and need, which I'm not used to from the big companies I worked for before. So I think in the hiring process, you really need to be open about that as well, to all the opportunity that it brings, so that people entering it fully understand that there are some risks involved. But on the other side, I see there are so much interest, and if you look at ambition, especially in Europe, we have to do this, and we have to succeed in order to meet the goals that has been already set. So there is a very good momentum to get the support. What might be frustrating for people coming into this area is the fact that things takes time, and especially about regulation, things like that, it's not fully in place. And all the discussion we have with authorities and the ones who make decisions about how things are done, they also gives approvals for the different solution. All of that is sort of a long, cumbersome process. So you have to be prepared that it's not going to be easy going. But I think that if you look at our team, most people they are aware of it, and they find happiness in actually. No one else did it, but we did it. So you have to, in a way, keep reminding yourself that you are moving ahead and you are setting the stage. And quite a few people, they are intrigued by that, luckily.
Let me ask a hypothetical then. So if it was an industry that you weren't passionate about, because clearly you've come from an academic background within the space. You love the science of it. You've then gone and worked in it. It's clearly a passion just from the way you're talking about it. I asked this question to other guests as well. How much of your success do you give to the fact that you have a passion and a drive for the thing that you are doing? And could you do the same thing in an industry that you didn't really care about? Would you be able to handle that pressure in the same way? Would you be able to get out of bed and go, no, I need to do this because? Does that make sense? Like what does that look like?
Yeah, I do understand. People are different, and for me, my job is an important part of my life, and I think that that goes with everyone in my company. They wake up in the morning and they feel that they are part of a mission. There are other people, they are happy with just going for work to get their salary, and that's it. When they leave a job, they don't think about it. I think I'm not the only one who actually feel that the job is part of my life, also in the weekends and in holidays and everything. You need a break, and you need to do other things as well, of course. But the passion is extremely important. If I don't find meaning in what I'm doing, I wouldn't be able to do a good job either. So the question you raised, I would not be able to work with a company when I felt that they were doing. I hope I don't step on anyone's feet, but the tobacco industry, for example, I could never work for. That wouldn't give me any joy or any meaning at all.
So that's a really interesting idea. How do you manage some of the pressures then? Because you mentioned that there's a lot of responsibility, which is you're seen in a positive way, but I'm sure some of those pressures do come around when you have those moments of high intense pressure and feels like the weight of the world is on your shoulders. How do you personally yourself manage that?
I'll start with a deep breath, I think. But yes, definitely. You need to give yourself breaks. So when I do have breaks, and that's something we talk a lot about, and I have a boss who said that take a break when you have the time. We are not following the clock normally, and I know that people work more than the mandatory 8 hours a day at job. So taking breaks, doing something else is extremely important, and it's also about taking care of yourself, getting enough sleep, eat well, and not too much junk food and so on, and exercise. Most of us, we are working from the computer, and you sit for 8 hours a day. So I do quite a lot of exercise. I'm running and doing some weightlifting and mountain biking and whatever, just to make sure that also the body is taken care of. But I think when the pressure is the highest, I'm struggling with sleep. So then it's sort of an early warning that now you have to step back and you have to relax, and also being very open to your colleagues about things, asking for help if you need to, and not take everything on board on yourself. So having a good team, playing with the strength of the team rather than doing everything solo is an important way of actually handling this extra stress. But I have to admit that from time to time I am stressed. So you have to, in a way, to adapt as well. But stress is by definition where you enter a point where you cannot handle it. So, and that's also something you can do by training. Some people there can handle a lot of stress while others cannot. So that's something you always have to take on a personal level, I think, to find the right balance in a way to avoid being too stressed.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you think that conversation comes up more now as we live in a world where we talk more transparently about challenges with things like mental health, etc., work-life balance because of things like COVID and remote working and working on site, etc. Do you have any thoughts on that from a sort of leadership perspective, like right or wrong answers, or do you think it's valid and that we should be talking about it more and trying to figure out the right balance?
I would say that you can never talk enough about mental health and life-work balance. And I think that we should never forget the fact that first we got the computer, and then we got all the other stuff that you carry around, just the mobile phone that you can basically do your work from. So unless you're in a way conscious about it, you have your work with you all the time. And with the COVID, those who didn't have a home office, most of them got it. So that means that the office is also now a part of your house. And your computer you can bring to the bedroom, so you're never off in a way. So being conscious about that and repeat not only yourself but also the people around you that you cannot work all the time. And I also think that the quality of work will be less if you don't give yourself time off to do other things. So yes, on one side we have been better at talking about it, but I'm not sure that people really manage to lay off their jobs. Just use an example of LinkedIn. I see how much time I spend on that, and that is on my private time watch, to put it like that. Yeah. And I think that goes the same to keep you up to date and so on. There's so much information, and especially in the green shift, that you're never able to be fully up to date in a way. And that's something also need to be conscious about, that you don't expect yourself or your colleagues to always be on top of it, but trying to get through all the noise and get the essence of things that really matters for both job and private. That's part of being a manager as well, to make sure that you don't need to get involved in everything and you don't need to be top of all the details, but you need to understand enough, understand the trends and so on, so that you can actually take action whenever needed.
What about the people that would be, for want of a better phrase, but below yourself in terms of skill set, etc., that you might be managing and building out? I'm sure Gen2 has big, massive growth plans across loads of different areas in order to be able to scale out this solution. Have you thought about the challenges that you're going to face there in terms of human capital and human resource and personalities and skill sets, and trying to scale out something that is going to be a monster, isn't it?
Yeah, a very relevant question, because to start with, finding people with this competence within green shift and hydrogen production, just as an example, there are not that many people because the world didn't need that kind of competence in the volumes we're talking about before. So I've been working very closely with academics and I have a position at the university in a board where I try to influence them to spend more time and prioritize higher jobs that are or education that's relevant to this. So that's where you in a way start with the new generations coming with the right skill set to meet the green shift. But when you don't have these people available now, you need to give them the right training. So then the personality really plays a big role in a way, because they, first and foremost, they need to be interested in learning. And the best thing would be if they love learning, because it's so much easier. But then it's also about preparing them when they come. We have made quite a lot of some introduction for dummies in different fields that's relevant to us, not overload them with a lot of stuff, but enough to get fast up to speed and follow them closely initially, giving them tasks and ask them how they thrive and how they do their jobs, giving them the necessary training and coaching if they need to. But you need to be quite close to them initially, and then let go when they are up to speed, and then just stimulate them to learn more as they go along. Because we should not underestimate that hiring people now in this field, the time before they are fully up to speed takes probably longer than it used before. And you need to put a lot of effort into that. So we try to find people we believe will not only do a good job from day one, but actually be able to do that over time. That they will stay, because if they leave, you have to start all over again. So we try to have an ambition about keeping the retention time low, because it's going to be a competition between the different players and some kind of cannibalism between the different companies wanting the same kind of competence. So in order to keep people stay in the job and in the company, I think it's more difficult now than before. And also younger people, they are used to leaving job, trying different things and so on. So you get that on top of all the other things that we are in a way struggling with. So finding people with the right attitude and the right interest, and as you mentioned also earlier, the passion. If they have that, that's so much easier.
Yeah. I think you're absolutely right. Obviously, it's, the world that I live in terms of hiring, etc. One of the biggest challenges we see is how to keep people in organizations, and how to spot that when you're actually hiring someone. Like, are they going to stay for longer than 12 months, or are they going to move around? I think long and short is that we live in a very different world, don't we, to what it was 20 years ago. My parents worked at one company for most of their career, and I'm sure a lot of that would be very similar for a lot of people. Whereas now that's really changing, isn't it? How much importance do you put on things like your employer value proposition and the message that your company is trying to give? Because ultimately that's why people will stay. They'll stay because they like the people around them and they believe in the mission of the company.
Absolutely, and I've been working very closely with academics for almost 2 centuries. And what I see that this young generation, they are really eager to make a difference. They really want to contribute, and they have been taught from, I would say, day one at school, the importance of taking care of the environment, the sustainability goals. I also see now the university in Norway, they have the EU's 17 sustainability goals part of their education. So they really have it under the skin. So actually having the motivation, I think it's easier now than before. And of course, when we see the effect of what probably is climate change, I think it's much easier to, I don't know how it's in England, but in Norway we have had a lot of rain over the summer and a lot of flooding, and more flooding than we have had in this century somewhere. Roads being blocked and railways being destroyed and so on. You really see the impact. And I think then going back to the people that we want to hire, I think they really see that there is a need for change and they are part of it. They're probably going to solve the mess that the generation before made. But on the other side, we have come up to a level of living that has never been there before. So we should at the same time try to keep the best of what we are doing and still taking better care of the world we're living in. And I think that the younger generation, they are really prepared for doing that.
It's certainly more tangible now, isn't it? Some of these challenges around climate change, we used to talk about them but not necessarily feel them or see them. And now it's easier for people to be behind the mission when they can see the problems that it's creating, isn't it?
Yeah, it's closer. It's not somewhere else. Yeah. It's actually in your neighborhood, so to speak. And that, of course, is worrying for many people. And as you say, we have stopped only talking. We are now seeing that we need to do something as well. And I think there is a lot of positivism as well, because technology is being developed. The cost of renewables has dropped like a stone, which is inevitably something we really need in order to make a change and get less addictive to fossil fuel. And the fossil fuel, they will end sooner or later anyhow. So we shouldn't stop them immediately, but we have to make it as fast as possible and make sure that we actually transform it into green alternatives faster than maybe we are willing to think, because it's going to cost as well. And now we see the money that the EU is spending on the green shift. It's a lot of money, but it's still not enough. So there will come more, hopefully in the years to come, and we need to speed up. And that's probably the most challenging thing, that people are eager, and some maybe lose faith in this because we are moving so slowly. But inevitably we need to do it, and I think we can.
One of the things I'm always trying to keep a track of in the nature of the business that I'm in is sort of key drivers which drive organizations. So it might be your driver might be to make money or save money or compliance, etc. One of the key drivers that I've started to see for organizations that aren't in the green energy space, just generally private sector organizations, is sustainability. Where outside of Gen2Energy now, if you were talking with a group of CEOs or founders of organizations, do you think that there's stuff that they need to be thinking of that's either going to become compliance, i.e. they're going to have to start to do certain things with whatever it is they're doing, and or thinking about sustainability because inevitably they have to, because like you said right at the start, it's everybody's responsibility, isn't it? And these corporations also have a responsibility. So what advice would you give to business owners when it comes to thinking about sustainability and what they might be able to do themselves?
One thing is what we need to do in order to change the way of living and the way we are treating the world. But I think more and more you will also see that there is a business side to it. There will be restrictions and taxes and so on, which is sort of the penalty and the bad thing about doing things like before. But there will also be opportunity that didn't were there before. I think that for some products you will be able to get a premium because people are willing to pay more. There's a question about how much, but we're definitely willing to pay more. And also, I think over time there will be a sort of expected that unless you are sustainable and you're doing it in a way the right way, they will not have the same success as if they did. And that's also something that I think that the generations to come is better at. It actually plays a role. It is important for them that these products are based on a sustainable way of producing. And we also see that some materials are now being very scarce and the cost is increasing. So unless they find alternatives which are more sustainable, they will be out of business in a way because it's going to be too costly to produce, and thereby they cannot get the profit they did before. So as I said, there are also a lot of economical incentives for why companies should look into sustainable solutions.
So do you think that's government's responsibility to put those incentives and disincentives when it comes to tax in place, or do you think it should just be down to these organizations to take it upon themselves to start influencing change?
I think to some extent, the competition between companies will play a role, but I do think that also the government has the biggest role there to get speed and volume and size for the green shift. People will not change unless they have to, and there are many different reasons for why people think they have to. But in this green shift, I think it will make a lot of. It's very important that people actually think differently, and a regulatory framework with either taxes or funding is going to be extremely efficient ways of making things happen faster and on a bigger scale.
Do you think that's inevitable, that those things? I mean, some of them already exist, don't they?
Yeah, but not to the extent that you need to have it. And if you can to put it a little bit bluntly, if you can get away with it, there is a lot of companies that still do that. And also, I remember when we talked about sustainability in the 80s, when it was introduced by our politicians called Gro Harlem Brundtland. She said that one of the biggest threats to sustainability is poverty. I mean, if you're hungry, you won't care about whether you use coal or electricity, if you at all have electricity as an alternative. So we need to make sure that also not only the western part of the world plays a role there, because if you look at the biggest emitters in the world, there's a lot of poverty in these countries, and they also need to get necessary help actually to turn green, which is not given. Look at countries like India and China, for example. You have, those two countries alone is 1/3 of the world's population. How do we get them to be sustainable? So the discussion you raised here is really about also where you live and how easy it is to turn green, if you can, in a way, afford it and still have a full stomach.
Yeah, I'd never thought of it looking at it that way. It's almost like we are in a privileged enough position to even be thinking about green energy because it won't affect the fact that we'll still get electricity and we'll still have food. Whereas if that was a sacrifice for green energy, then you would never choose that, would you?
Exactly. That's the hard reality. If you are poor and hungry, you wouldn't care so much for sustainability, I think, which I fully understand.
Yeah. So, well, I guess, how do you solve that? What's the solution there?
Well, I think it helps with education. At least they are aware of the fact that there is a difference between the options you have to make energy, but you also have to give support. We are giving aid for food programs and so on, which we definitely should continue doing. But I also think that we need to help them with other things. And one of the things that could really play a big role was to build out the infrastructure, like grids and power plants and harbors and things like that, so they can actually bring in all the good stuff that the green shift is actually developing as we speak. And then gradually they will get it. And then also then looking at my former company, Yara, they did a lot of food programs that taught them how to grow vegetables and how to do it efficiently with fertilizer and so on. I think you do the same with renewables. Put up solar panels. You don't maybe not even need grids, local grids there, and so on. So there are a lot of things we could do, but they need support and help and good loans with high risk maybe. But I think incentivize them to do it on their own is definitely on the longer term the only solution. Bringing just help there and then it won't give a sustainable solution in the end. That's why I think that infrastructure is really one of the key things that we should start with supporting them with.
In your expert opinion, as somebody that is very clearly knowledgeable within this, what's the timeline here? If we're bringing it back to the Western world, and I'm a leader sitting listening to this podcast thinking, bloody hell, there's this entire thing coming with sustainability. I can already see the effects in the world around me. I need to think about my own organization and what I'm going to do. How long is it before these things become compulsory, before they become a necessity to remain competitive compared to other people that are, having to spend lots of money to try and get some of the materials? Or how long? What's the timeline for you need to really be thinking about this now, because within X amount of time, the world's going to look very different from an infrastructure perspective and how organizations operate, etc.
It's a tricky question, but I remember when we started discussing about the climate change and the fact that the temperature has risen 1 degree since the industrial era started. And we see that we had a goal of 1.5. Now we're talking about maybe 4 or 5 degrees increase if we don't do anything very quickly. And just as a comparison, the last ice age was 5 degrees below what it used to be now. Just imagine how it would be if you go 5 degrees up instead. It's going to be devastating. So I really hope that is not going to be the motivation in the end, that we reach a stage where we cannot in a way turn back. So it's urgent that we start doing things quite fast, but we have to, in a way, we cannot give away the society. So whether it's going to be 10 or 20 years, I'm not sure, but I don't think it will happen tomorrow. And the change we are seeing and all the efforts that is needed is going to take a lot of time. But I do think that it's possible to do it by 2040, 50 maybe. But if with the speed we have now, I'm actually quite sure that we will not manage in time to really make a change. So it's urgent. I must say that. And back to my motivation, that's why I think we need to do a lot at the same time. Recent had a report in Norway about the situation, and the conclusion was that we need to do everything faster. And I think that is a very good statement of what I think is needed to really turn this climate change back to where it should be. And the speed is of essence. So we are in a hurry.
Well, thanks for terrifying all of us. And we're going to have nightmares tonight. But I'm just conscious of time, so we'll look to wrap things up now. What's next for Gen2Energy? What can we expect to start seeing from you guys?
Well, we have spent, for myself, I spent now more than 2 years, and they have gone very fast, actually, to find the right design, to actually find the right suppliers. And now we have actually made the design of the first plant that we are now about to build. And the plan is to get an FID, and for those who don't know what that is, that's financial investment decision, meaning that then you get the go to start building. And that should take place early next year. And then it's all about getting the plant up as fast as possible. So within the 2026, we hope to get the first shipment to our customers. Wow. And then we have already now a few more plants and or locations in the pipeline. So we will be one of the first out, and also this plant we are planning to do, it will be one of the larger ones in Europe and basically in the world. So we are not the first mover, but we will be quite big, quite fast, and that's what we are aiming for. And with this solution, as I mentioned about the complete value chain, this is something that people can build on. People can copy it, and I do think that being first out and first mover is something that we will also benefit from going forward. So I'm not afraid that we will be outcompeted by people coming after us. We will hopefully always be ahead of them. But more importantly, we will get this hydrogen produced, and we will, in a way, start contributing to the green shift in real terms.
Amazing. I look forward to seeing it and hearing more about it. Maybe we should do another podcast in like 12 months' time. The end of next year, and we'll see where things are at.
Please do.
Yeah, that'd be exciting to see. Well, good luck with everything. Obviously, you and I will maintain in touch for other reasons, but I think it's very exciting. You've always come across as very ambitious, very passionate about this, and very driven by it. You can see that it means something to you, and I think if people can rally behind that, and you can find other people who feel the same way, then your success will hopefully be inevitable, and we'll start to solve some of the problems.
Absolutely, and we shouldn't lose faith in the future. I think we have a bright future ahead of us, but we need to plan for it and do what's needed.
Yeah, a pleasure. Thank you for coming on, Odd-Arne. Thanks for spending some time with us. Quick reminder to anybody that's listening, a huge part of what we do here is about engagement and getting people involved in the conversation. So there will be links to my LinkedIn and Odd-Arne's LinkedIn. You can check out Gen2Energy. Please feel free to reach out to us and communicate with us directly and ask more questions around this and leadership or clean energy or whatever it might be. There's questionnaires. There's a bunch of different stuff that marketing told me to talk about. But there's plenty of ways to engage with us. Please do. We're happy to continue this conversation. It's clearly a very important conversation for everybody to be having. And I think the more eyes we can get on it and the more conversations we can get going in this arena, the better and more chance we've got of succeeding on this mission, isn't it?
Absolutely. And thank you for being invited. I hope the conversation is of interest to more than the two of us, and I definitely think so.
Yeah, just us. We'll just listen back to it when we're going to sleep tonight. Absolute pleasure. Thank you, Odd-Arne. I'll leave you enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.